Okay, let's take a break and answer a question on a different topic. Several people have asked me, why do you live in Manila? When I answer that question, they ask me, well, how did you end up in the Philippines? And when I answer that, they ask, well, how did you end up there? And so on and so on. So in this video, I'll try to answer all of these questions together. I was released from prison in 2005. My original prison sentence was from 1995 to 2008, but Governor Gary Locke of Washington State, on his last day in office, overturned my sentence by granting me a commutation. After leaving office as governor, Locke went on to become the President's Secretary of Commerce and then the United States Ambassador to China. Here's a bit of trivia. There have been, to my knowledge, 3 prisons on islands in the USA: Alcatraz near San Francisco, Rikers Island in New York, which is connected by a bridge, and McNeil Island in Washington State. During my incarceration, I was in several different prisons, but spent most of my time on McNeil. If you zoom in here, you can see the main prison, and that's why it's so hard for me to make videos, because I'm right next to a highway, so I'm constantly interrupted with traffic. Where was I? So if you zoom in here, you can see the main prison. One of the most unreal, insane days of my life was when the prison guards came to my cell and escorted me down to the gate here, down the road, onto the boat. We rowed across the water. I got off at the dock here, walked up that ramp. I had to sign a form. Then I walked out here, and for the first time in almost 10 years, the guards turned around and left. That yellow line right here is painted on the sidewalk. Once I crossed that yellow line, I was a free man. There's no words to describe that experience. If you cross that yellow line, you are under the jurisdiction of the prison. So here's the lesson: stay away from the yellow line. I joined the Adventist Church, and shortly thereafter got involved in local outreach projects like feeding the homeless, which was interesting because I saw some of my former cellmates there. Now, when I got out of prison, I didn't tell anyone in my church about my history. Nobody in my church except for the pastor and an elder knew, but for everyone else, when they asked me, "Oh, welcome to our church. How did you find this church? Who are you? Where are you from?" I told them that I grew up in the area, that I left home at 16, that I moved around a lot and had several different jobs and went to school part-time, and that now in 2005 I moved back home and I'm going to school full-time. All of that was true, of course, except for a few details. I did not tell anyone that I had been in prison because, number 1, I did not think anyone would want to know. Number 2, I didn't want to freak anyone out. Number 3, to say that I was in prison for me was very embarrassing, so I didn't want to tell anyone. And number 4, it didn't really matter. There was no practical application for that info. As I was volunteering in my local church, the pastor noticed this and invited me to go on a short-term mission trip to Mexico for a few weeks. While in Mexico, I really enjoyed it, so the pastor hooked me up with a group of Adventist students from an Adventist university that were going to Venezuela for several months to build some churches, so I joined them. After several months in Venezuela, I was invited to go to Costa Rica as a volunteer Bible and English teacher for 6 months. An Adventist school there, way up in the mountains, needed someone to fill a teaching position, and since nobody else wanted to go, I went. At the end of 6 months, I was not sure where to go or what to do, so I prayed, and after I prayed, I received 3 emails from 3 different pastors, all asking if I would like to get involved in some mission projects in Southeast Asia. I said sure, so again I signed up through AVS, Adventist Volunteer Services, and because of my previous volunteer experience, I was approved to go to Thailand for a 6-month project, but at the end of 6 months, the kids at the orphanage and refugee camp did not want me to leave, and the people in the community where I was working wanted me to stay, and so 6 months turned into 5 years. During the 5 years, I was involved in volunteering at an orphanage and also at a refugee camp, prison ministry, working at the AIDS hospital, and various different projects. I often get asked, how did I support myself? Well, each assignment or project is different depending on where you go, but usually as a volunteer, you will usually get free housing or food or some stipend. Sometimes you don't get any of those. Most of the time you do. Everywhere I went, I received free housing, sometimes free food. A few church members were supportive of what I was doing, so I received about $300 a month, sometimes less, sometimes more, sometimes nothing. Often I was invited to go do evangelism series or help on a mission project in various countries, but since I was a volunteer, I had no money, so if people invited me to go, then someone had to pay for the travel. And so as long as people paid for those expenses, I went. Near the end of 5 years, I was invited to do several weeks of evangelism in the Philippines. During a week of prayer, I met someone very special who I fell in love with, and we are now married. At the time, my wife, then girlfriend, had just finished medical school. We got married and she started her 4-year residency. For those who don't know, residency is when you are, for all practical purposes, a resident of the hospital. You live there. You basically do not leave. You are there at least 80 to 100 hours a week. Now, since several of you asked, the average resident salary in the USA is around $57,000. Every country and each hospital within a country are different, but here in the Philippines, it ranges from around $2,000 to $6,000 a year, sometimes a bit more for public hospitals. My wife works at a private hospital, gets about $5,000 a year, which is about $440 a month, which is about $1.15 an hour. Now, that's just residency. You'll make more, of course, once you finish, but now you get an idea why even doctors overseas want to go work in Western countries. In fact, many doctors are happy to go work as nurses because you will make far more as a nurse abroad than as a doctor in your home country. Now, when you finish medical school, you are a doctor, but to be specialized, you will have to take a residency program in your specialty. Residency can be quite brutal, but without a specialty, your options can be really limited, and only certain hospitals offer residency programs, so that's why we are here in Manila. Napenda indimu.
I like lemon.
Do you like lemon?
Yes.
Napenda dizi.
I like banana.
A bit of trivia. According to Wikipedia, Manila is the most densely populated city in the world. One day, my wife surprised me. We had an unplanned pregnancy, so now I'm a stay-at-home dad changing diapers when I'm not mashing up broccoli and carrots and rice, or when my son is taking a nap. I spend time studying or working on video. And whenever I get free time, which isn't often, I get involved in prison ministries and various evangelism projects. Here's a trip to do jail ministry, and it's so crammed inside the van that we sit on top, and on the top, the only thing to hold on to is your faith, so you better get some. I go to several jails and prisons, but at one right here, they use a barrel to baptize the prisoners. Nearby the jail, they sell mango ketchup, so you can get some of that if you want. One time we had to walk through the jungle to go to a place for a youth event, and we had to cross this tiny bamboo bridge which collapsed underneath us and we fell into the river. It was very funny afterwards, but it was definitely not funny when it happened. Remember to pray always when crossing small bridges like that, and if it collapses, then pray on your way down. When my wife finishes her 4-year residency, we will, by God's grace, leave Manila, and I'm not sure exactly what we will do, but for long-term plans, we would like to go do missions, frontier missions, somewhere preferably among unreached people groups inside the 1040 window, which means that hopefully I will be living with Hindus, Buddhists, or Muslims. So where will I be a few years from now? All I can say is Hebrews 11:8, by faith, Abraham obeyed. He went out not knowing where he was going. I consider it a very high privilege to be making these videos on abortion, and I thank God I'm not employed right now. Otherwise, I wouldn't have time to wade through the filth of Adventists and abortion. So thank you very much to those people who want to help support this work. So that answers the question why I'm in Manila. If you have any other questions, put them in the comment section down below, or just email me at prolifeandrew@gmail.com. Metanoia is the Greek word for repentance, so if you need a repentant taxi driver in Manila, here you go right here. People ask me, Andrew, do you speak the national language of Tagalog or Filipino? Well, gusto kong matutong magsalita ng Tagalog, pero masyadong maganda ang aking guro, hindi ko maalala natutunan, which means I really want to learn to speak Tagalog, but my teacher is so beautiful I can't remember what I learned.